All right. Okay, in case anybody's in the wrong place, this is called the business world, so you can leave if you need to. No hard feelings. All right, let's pray before we get started. Yeah, God, thank you so much for the callings that you put on our lives, for every one of us and all the different breakout rooms and the things that you called us to or ways that we're questioning it or whatever it is. God, I pray that you just use these next couple of hours to practically equip us for the next steps that you have for us, and just help us be good stewards of this time. In Jesus' name, amen. Cool. All right, so I'm assuming you guys are all in here because you either work a full-time job and that's where you feel called, or you're going to and that's where you feel called, yeah? Yeah, cool. All right. Parker's like, I'd rather be racing. It's still a job. If you get paid for it, it's a job, right? That's like if you get paid for it. Well, a semblance of a job. Hey. Oh, no, come on in. You're good. There's more chairs if you want to sit on this chair. But, okay, cool. No, you're good. She's going to not pay attention and work instead. I'm just kidding. No. So I don't know where all of you guys are in just the way that you look at your job. Maybe I should start by asking that question. How many of you guys are like, I am called to the job that I'm in, this is my mission field, and I know it? Okay, and how many of you guys are like, dang it, I have a job?
Also.
Okay, cool. Good, so about 50-50, great. Yeah, so I think, man, especially when you're at a weekend like this, where it's just like, you get so excited about the work that God's doing around the world and like the things that God's doing. Sometimes I think in my heart, this call to the business world can like feel like, oh, that's like third tier. You know, like that's the important stuff. And like, this is just like, I have to make money to pay bills. And so I'm going to do this so that I can do that kind of thing. Anybody else feel that way sometimes? Yeah. So I want to kind of start there in this breakout and just tell you a little bit of my journey in that and where I've been. And some of you guys know some of this story, but so sorry, you get to hear it again. But, just kind of my journey of going from, I have to have a job. I really wish I was doing something else with my life, to, I love my job and this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And it enables me to do ministry in so many different ways, here and in other places. And so for me, that was, it was like a 6-year fight with God, honestly. Because like, I knew I was called to ministry. Like, that's what I wanted to do with my whole life. Like, I moved overseas and lived overseas as a missionary full time. Like, that was what I was called to. And then we had bills, and a church planter salary, or, negative salary of church planting, and sometimes in some seasons, especially those early years, did not cut it. And so somebody needed a job, and it ended up being me. So, for a long time, honestly, I resented it. I would get angry when I had to go to work, and I would be like, oh, this is such a waste of time. And like, I would get home and I'd be like, oh, all these things that I could have been doing for the kingdom, but I couldn't because I was sitting in my stupid office job. Like, that was my heart attitude, honestly, towards my work for a long time. Honestly, it really wasn't until God kind of broke me in that anything shifted. I wish I could say, here's like the 5-step process of here's how you shift your heart. But like, really, it just had to be God saying, Autumn, stop it, you're being dumb. And me saying, oh, okay. But like, just that realization of it isn't just you have a job, like you are called to the work that you do. And then we're going to go through a whole bunch of different scriptures and a whole bunch of different things. But having that mindset shift of I'm going to work versus I'm going to my calling, for me made all the difference in how I interacted and in how I handled myself at work and all of the different things that I did there. And work wasn't that thing that I had to get done as quick as possible so that I could get to what I wanted to do. It became the thing that I wanted to do, even when I was in crappy jobs. And I'll tell you, I'll let you know here, I'm going to tell a whole bunch of stories. That's what a lot of this breakout is going to be, because that's how I learned a lot of this stuff, is just stories with people and living life with people at work. So I'm going to tell you, I don't know, like 5 things. I can't remember how many, so don't count. A couple of different things that are good mindset shifts to have being in the workplace that will help you shift from it's just a job to this is my calling, this is my ministry. So the first one is a very, very practical, very simple one, and it's just work with excellence. Colossians 3:23 and 24 is one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It's the Lord Christ you're serving. I love that. And I think for a long time in my life, I was like, whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord. So yes, every time I lead worship, every time I lead a Bible study, every time I take a youth group, every time I'm going to do it for the Lord. But when I go to work, I'm like, ugh. But that mindset shift of, no, this is my calling. Like, Scripture doesn't say whatever you do for the local church. It says whatever you do. It's a very blanket statement. So if you're at home with a crying baby, if you are at work, if you are at a baseball field, if you whatever you do, wherever you are, work at it with all of your heart, as if working for the Lord. That's the part that got me. And that's the part that made this verse a mindset shift for me with work. As if working for the Lord. It's like this assumption that he's not talking to church leaders. He is talking to us in this room. You know what I mean? Whatever you do, work at it with all of your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters. So, there's a couple of reasons for that. I mean, like, just practically, if you're a slacker in your job and you're not working with excellence, then, like, why would people listen to you? Like, why would they listen at all when you decide to tell them about Jesus? You know? Or if you're like, oh man, ReAlign was so good, I'm going to go tell my coworkers about Jesus now. Like, but if you've been slacking off and you've been the one person at your team that is always pulling everything down or always making everything go late or whatever, they don't have any respect for you. Like, that's just what it is. You have to earn that kind of respect, and you earn it by working with excellence. That's like the number one way that we do that. I mean, that's something that literally even lost people strive for. So as Christians, like, so much more so, we should be striving to work with excellence. But, or if you're just bad at your job, like if you're just in the wrong position, like the wrong company, the wrong place, and you're just terrible at your job, like, why would they respect you? You know what I mean? Like, if you're the person that is always the lowest performing on your team, no one on your team has any respect for you. You know what I mean? And if there's no respect, then they're not going to listen to a message that you have. So working with excellence, like, really, really matters. Or if you're a leader, maybe you're the boss at your work, and if you're a hard leader and you're not compassionate towards your coworkers, employees. Thank you. That's the word. Wow. If you're not compassionate towards your employees and, like, being a part of their lives, like, and you're not doing your job with excellence that makes their lives easier, then why would they even care what you have to say? You're just that boss that they roll their eyes at, and they're like, ugh, I hope she didn't come by today. I hope he doesn't walk into my office today. You know what I mean? But, like, when we work with excellence, it shifts the mindset of that. And it gives us the opportunity to have a platform to be able to speak. So let me back up just for a minute and say all of these things that we're going to talk about, the goal is to share the gospel with people, right? The goal is to bring Jesus into your workplace. The goal is to make it a calling, not just so you can do the work and get a paycheck, but so that you can make an impact, an eternal impact on your coworkers and on your company and all the things that you're doing. And so working with excellence really matters. I've got one of the companies that I worked for, I worked on a sales team, which was super fun. I'm not a salesperson. But anyway, I worked on a sales team, and there's this one guy on my team. His name was Corey. And Corey was like, his name is Corey. That's enough. That's it, right? Like, that tells you know a lot about him already. He was like, frat boy, arrogant jerk who, got his undergrad at business school, and he was going out to conquer the world, and he knows everything. This was literally his first job ever. And I'm like, dude, okay, you're a child. Anyway. I did. That's not the story I'm telling. I did say that to him one day. So, no, it's not undermining. That was actually kind of part of the point. No, so he like absolutely just an arrogant jerk. And in all honesty, like he started working, came in, oh, I'm the best salesperson you've ever seen, and I'm going to blow everyone's numbers out of the water. And he didn't at all. Like he was a massive underperformer all the time. And yet in every meeting, he was like, oh, well, I do it this way. And we were all like, great, so don't do that. You know, like that was kind of all of our attitude towards this guy. But, you know, for whatever reason, he and I kind of developed a friendship. And honestly, what it started from was so I worked at this company right when COVID hit. Like Corey and I started the same day, and then 2 days later COVID hit and they sent us all home, right? And so we're all sitting at home with our laptops like, what the heck we do? We were all there. No one knew how to do virtual work. No one knew what we were supposed to be doing and all that kind of thing. And I was just like, this is awful. Like God had just, before this job, like just gotten a hold of my heart, like pretty recently about this is my calling. And then I'm isolated. And I was like, you're freaking kidding me. Like, this is the worst timing ever. And I was like, how in the world can I make an impact on my team if I'm not even with them? Like, they're literally just on a computer and I have a 10-minute call with them every Monday morning and that's it. And so I started doing Zoom lunches. And I would just like set up a Zoom link and invite my whole team every single day to have lunch. And just be like, hey, pop in if you want to. We're not doing anything. We're just going to have lunch and hang out. And so I started doing that. And, you know, people would come in and out and that kind of thing. And Corey was one of the ones that would come a lot because, you know, he wanted to tell everybody all the things that he'd done that day and brag about everything. But we would just kind of chat about whatever. But one thing I did in that time that was like really awkward. So I should lay the foundation that not a single person on my team was a Christian. In fact, all of them were not just not Christians, but like Christians are stupid. Like that was a lot of the conversation that happened, led by my boss. It was great fun. And so when I started the lunch thing, I was like, okay, I have to make this intentional somehow without being like, so what do you think about Jesus? Since I just met you and never really met you. So I just started it and I was like, hey, if this is my Zoom call, then I kind of have control over it. And so I was like, hey guys, hey, thanks for joining us on Zoom. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to pray for my food real quick. And then I would pray for my food and then we'd go on. And that was it. I never said anything else about it. I just prayed for my food and then, so what'd you guys do this weekend? You know, just chatted about whatever. And so, you know, over the course of time, Corey kind of became my friend and came to the point where he did start coming to me. And he was like, I don't know, I'm not doing very well and all this kind of, you know, he was struggling with a couple of things and it was mostly that everybody else was doing things wrong and, you know, he was getting punished for it and all this kind of stuff. And that was when I said, you're being a child and you need to do the things you're supposed to do and then you'll still have a job. So he got fired. He deserved it. He deserved it. He knew he deserved it. But the thing that was cool about it was he got fired and hung up the phone from getting fired because COVID, so he's a rote. And then he picked back up the phone and he called Yale. Wow. The first phone call he made after he got fired was Yale. And he said, I just got fired. I don't know what to do with my life. And Yale was like, meet me at this place for lunch. And so he went and took him to lunch and like talked him through all kinds of things in life. I was like, hey man, so why do you think you got fired? He's like, Autumn told me it's because I'm da-da-da. Like, all these He's like, yeah, she's probably right. That's probably why you got fired. Anyway, but through that interaction and like, it's one of those things that like, honestly, selfishly, it was a little bit frustrating because I was like, I invested so much in this guy, and then Yale's the one that got to lead him to Christ. Like that kind of sucked. But anyway, you know, it's for the kingdom. But at lunch, he gave his life to Jesus and was just like, man, I'm screwing my whole life up, and I'm doing everything. I'm not living anything the right way. And come to find out, he was on a lot of drugs. And that's why he was so bad at everything that he did. But because he was working from home, it was hidden, and he lived by himself, and like all of this kind of stuff. He ended up, after that conversation with Yale, picking up and moving to California and admitting himself into a drug rehabilitation center and lived there for 9 months, got baptized in the ocean out there, started going to a church as a part of the drug rehab center, and just recently moved back to Indianapolis a couple months ago. He was actually at Near West a few weeks ago. And he and his now fiance, who is a Christian girl who loves Jesus. No way. Like, all because of a Zoom call where I said, hey, can I pray for our lunch? That was the deepest spiritual conversation I ever had with this guy. And in his low moment, he came straight to us because that's all he knew. Like, the power of just doing things with excellence and being intentional, it matters. Like, it literally changes lives. So work with excellence. The second one is be bold from day one and then be consistent. Now, everybody here has a job, so it's not day one. But you can start tomorrow or Monday. That can be your day one, right? But here's the thing. Your coworkers, your boss, your employees, they should know that you're a Christian. And not that you're like shoving it down their throats all the time, but they should know that you're a Christian. Like, there should be no doubt in their mind. If you have any coworkers that are like, I don't know, he's kind of a nice guy, but maybe, I don't know, maybe he's like a church-going person, then you're doing something wrong. Like, they should know beyond a shadow of a doubt that you follow Jesus, because it should be on your lips all the time. And again, not in like a showy way, not in a, I'm going to push my way into this and push every conversation to Jesus, but like, you have so many opportunities. I mean, how many of you guys have like a team meeting that happens regularly? Yeah. And how often does your boss, or do you as the boss, say, hey guys, how was your weekend? Right? Mm-hmm. I don't know about you guys, but we, like that same sales team, every Monday we had a Monday morning meeting, and that was the question. And a couple of people, you know, would kind of filter in because it was an early morning meeting, so everybody was like 5 or 10 minutes late. But my boss would always be like, hey, what's the weekend news? What did everybody get up to? And, you know, oh, I drank here, I drank there, I drank here, I drank there. Like, everybody just got drunk the whole weekend long. That's all they did. Like they must have blown their entire paycheck just on bars. I don't know how they did it. But anyway, that was like the constant thing. And so I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm just going to make that my place that I can say something. And so every single time, like I would wake up extra early so that I could be the first one. Like, I beat my boss to the Zoom call every week. I was the first one on every single time. And I would listen, and I would wait until there was at least 4 or 5 people on the call before I would answer the question of how was your weekend. And then I would have an answer of something that God did that weekend, every single time. And when they're like, oh, I got drunk and I did this, or my girlfriend and I did it, or my boyfriend and I, whatever it was, then they were like, what did you do, Autumn? I was like, oh man, our church does a clinic, and I was up there this past weekend. I got to kind of see what they're doing. And, you know, we just give free healthcare to people. Or, hey, this was when we were building Irvington. Oh, another work day. Honestly, that team ended up doing a building work day at Irvington when we were doing demo, and pulled like all the scraping of popcorn and pulling down the ceiling in the back of the building. That was that sales team that came and did it. And that's what it came from, was me just saying, oh, another work day. This week we're doing drywall. This week we're demoing. This week we're whatever. And just saying like that, and like, man, I got to work with my church again this weekend. I got to do this again. I got to go, man, this morning I was spending time with God, and he spoke this, and I've really been thinking about that a lot today. Like, those kinds of things, but not like shoving it down anyone's throat, but just, they asked how my weekend was, and that's what I did. So I told them. Now, I also did a lot of other things, but I didn't tell them those things. I just focused on the things that I knew were going to have an impact. And so being bold to like speak out and say those things and make sure, you know, don't be weird about it, but just make Jesus part of the conversation, because he's part of your life, you know, and let people know that. Sidebar there, if you're not actually spending time with Jesus and reading the Word of God, you're not going to have anything to say in those moments. So, follow up with that. But yeah, so that was one thing. Another example of that, I worked at this company that was a trash company called AOTMP. It was a tech company that just, oh man, they're worst job I've ever had in my life. Worst job I've ever had in my life, at least in the last 10 years. My boss was a guy named Andrew, who was just the literal worst. He was also like I know everything and I know exactly what I'm doing. And you should all just do what I say, and and ask no questions, and that kind of a guy. So he was not a super encouraging boss. But I just kind of made it my goal to like encourage him. Because I could tell, like, in just praying for him and like watching the way he interacted, the way that he reacted to things, I was like, this guy is like identity crisis. Like, he is just struggling so hard to prove that he is good enough in every single moment. And so I was like, I'm just going to make it my mission to constantly encourage this guy. And every time I see anything even remotely decent that he does, I'm going to be like, dude, that was so good. Hey, thanks for leading that meeting. Like, I got a lot out of that. Or like, if I got one thing, I'd be like, hey, that was a really good thing that you said. Like whatever it was. I just went out of my way to encourage him and to like just be that for him. And then anytime that he asked me anything about my life, I would encourage him, and I would just talk about like, man, this is what God's teaching me about who I am. Like I just made everything kind of focused on that, of things that God was teaching me, and I would just ask God to teach me things about that so I would have things to say in that season. Like that's just kind of where I was. And I was just like, I'm going to win this guy over. I'm going to win this guy over. And then he got fired. There's a theme here. There's a theme here. I work for a lot of bad companies. A lot of people get fired, including me. But when Andrew got fired, it was different. Like, I don't know how many people you have seen get fired. I've seen a lot in my days. But when Andrew got fired, he came, the HR office was in the front of our office, and it was like this long open office space, right? Our desks were always all the way in the back of the building. He came running out. I bet there were 120 F words from that door to our desk, like yelling and screaming and like literally knocking things off of people's desks. He got to our desk and he picked up his laptop, and I was like, dude, what is going on? He's like, I just got fired. F you! And like threw his laptop across the room. I mean, like, we were all like, oh man, this is rough. Right? So that was my last day with Andrew. 2 weeks later, he called me.
Stop.
And he said, hey, I want to tell you something. And I was like, yeah, man, what's up? I was like, how you doing? What's going on? What are you going to tell me? And he goes, I want to tell you something. I went home and my wife asked me why I thought I got fired. And I told her it's because the company's stupid and they're all dumb and it's true. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, and then she looked at me and said, I think it's because you're a really bad employee. And I think maybe you should have listened to that Autumn girl who was telling you about Jesus. Dang. His wife had apparently had a coworker of hers that shared the gospel with her 2 months before, and she gave her life to Jesus and had been trying to get him to do the same, and he wouldn't listen. So he called me 2 weeks after he got fired and told me he gave his life to Jesus and sent me a picture of him getting baptized.
Wow. That's so you just sit there and weep.
Yes, sure did. Sure did.
Yep.
It matters that we're bold. It matters that we're consistent. It just does. The third one is be intentional. James 5:16 says this. It says, the prayer of the righteous is powerful and effective. Right? You've heard that scripture before. James 5:16. The prayer of the righteous is powerful and effective. Guys, we can only make an impact if we're intentional. I catch a lot of flack from a lot of you guys for how intentional I am sometimes with different things. And we're going to go overboard. There's a fine line between being intentional and being manipulative. So we have to be careful about that. There really is. We have to walk that line very, very carefully. But be intentional. And that starts with praying. Like pray, pray, pray. Like seriously, do not underestimate the power of prayer. The prayers of the righteous are powerful and effective. Ask God to highlight certain coworkers that you have. Because I mean, you might have 20 people on your team, or you might be in a huge company, and you're like, I mean, what kind of an impact can I make? It matters to the one, right? Love the little boy and the starfish. You know what I'm talking about? Throwing the starfish in the ocean, and people saying, "What are you doing that?" He said, "It matters to that one." I saved that one, right? Who are the coworkers? Like, honestly, I love praying the cop-out prayer of, God, show me who's soft. Like, I don't want to spend my time like trying to convince someone who's like totally hard against the gospel. Like, show me who you're already working in, and then tell me how to speak into their life and to do that. But ask them to highlight certain people. Invite them to your house for dinner. That is so not a Midwestern thing to do. That's what I've learned since being here. It's not a Midwestern thing to do to like invite someone to your house, but I did it all the time. I've had coworkers. I've had so many of my coworkers over to our house for dinner. I'll tell a couple of those stories here, but so many of them have come, and honestly, most of the time they're just curious. Most of the time, they're like, I feel bad saying no. I guess I'll come to your house. Yeah, we can come. And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I think, oh, we've been talking a lot, and your husband does web design, and my husband does web design. I bet they would get along too, so bring your husband. Like, let's hang out. We have kids. Yeah, bring your kids over. Let's do a dance party in the garage and let them get some energy out, and we can chat and drink wine, like whatever it is. Like whatever you got to do. Like, get them into your home. Get them into your space. And when they're there, they feel the difference. Like, especially at our house, I always love the look on people's faces when people just start walking in our door. Yeah. It happens all the time. Every time I've had a coworker over, somebody random has just walked in our front door, and they're like, and I'm like, oh, that's okay. They go to our church. Hey, do you guys need something? Oh, no, I was just going to go to the fire pit. Like, great, go. Like, whatever. And they're always like, huh? Like, and it stirs up so many conversations, right? It stirs up so many conversations. And then the funny thing is, the next week, all they talk about at work is the fact that they were at my house for dinner. That we made them coffee. That you guys got to go to their house and see their fire pit. You guys got to, we're having dinner and this random guy just walked in and walked out of their basement. They have people that live with them. That was the constant conversation because we live different, right? We just live other. So live other and invite them into that, even though it's kind of awkward. They're more likely to come to your house than to come to church. They really are. So invite them. So I had 2 stories here. One is a guy named Andy who worked at that AOTMP trash place. I think this is being recorded. I probably shouldn't say that. Anyway, that's okay. They know it. What are they going to do, fire me? Oh, it hurts. Not really, it was good. So there was this guy named Andy who came in as our marketing manager. And the first thing that Andy said to me when I met him in the break room was, I walked in and I was like, hey, you're Andy, right? And he goes, are you Autumn? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, I heard you're a Christian. And I was like, yeah. I'm also in the research department. There's a few other facts about me, literally first interaction. And he just goes, I hate Christians. And I was like, cool. Honestly, bro, I do a lot of the time too. We're the worst. And he was like, huh? And I was like, yeah, man, there are so many Christians that just claim the name of Jesus, but don't even follow the word of God. Yeah. And I'm trying really hard to not be one of those people, but you're probably going to see something different at some point in me, so I'm sorry from here, to start. Andy was very openly gay. And because I'm a Christian, he was like, that's going to make her uncomfortable. So then from that point on, every single conversation with me, every interaction with me was, my boyfriend and I, every time, and overly gay, only with me, not with anyone else. And so I was just like, man, that's cool. Yeah, let's, I would just kind of carry on the conversation and talk about whatever else. And then came the day that just praying for Andy and just saying, okay, God, is he just one of those hard people that I just need to be okay, nope, I'm going to focus on somebody else. And it really felt like God was saying, no, press in. Try to build a relationship. And so I did. And for about 6 months or so, I did that and just got to the point where at lunch, he would come sit with me at the table in the break room, and room full of tables, and he would initiate and come sit with me. And I was like, yeah, we're getting somewhere. So I was like, okay, it's time. Hey, Andy, do you and your boyfriend want to come to our house for dinner sometime this week? And he was like, no. And I was like, all right. Well, if you ever want to, we'd love to have you over sometime. And he was like, yeah, no. Yeah, no. But then the talk around the office after that, I had 15 people come up to me and be like, did you invite Andy and his boyfriend to your house for dinner? Yeah. But aren't you a Christian? Yes. Don't Christians hate gay people? No. And they were like, oh. Okay. That's the end of my story with Andy. He didn't give his life to Jesus. I wish I could say he did. He didn't. But you know what? It did break down a huge barrier. And honestly, to me, I'm the fact that he went around and told everybody in the office that I invited him to dinner at my house, that was a huge win. Yeah. And so I'll side note there and say, take the small wins. Not everything is going to be a great story.
Yeah.
Not everything is going to end up wonderful. Some people are going to hate you just because they're going to hate you because they've already decided to. And sometimes they'll tell you that to your face, and it's great fun. But at the end of the day, like, take the little wins and, trust that God's going to do the rest. It's not my job to save anybody. It's just my job to be bold and to be obedient to what God tells me to do. But yeah, another story. I really hesitate to tell this story because he's going to be here teaching a breakout soon. I didn't know he was coming, but I'll tell it anyway. So this last job that I worked at, my boss was a guy named Zach. This was a great company. I'll say this. It was a great company. It was a stark difference from my last company where everybody hated Christians. This is everybody except one person in the office were Christians. They're all like Traders Point, Hamilton Hills, like Fishers, church people. Which was a very different environment to be in for sure. But still got to have a lot of impact on their lives just in different ways. But my boss, kind of the main CEO of our company was Zach. And I'll tell you, like, that job, it was a very hard place to be. Not because of the culture, not because of the environment, not because, just simply because of the work itself. When they hired me in, the company was in shambles, and it was way more in shambles than they even realized that it was when he hired me in. So he runs a law firm, a nonprofit law firm that does stuff. And then this was a separate company that they started, was the one that I was running. So kind of the same, but yeah, connected. Anyway, so the side that I was on was just spiraling and in pieces. And honestly, a big part of it was they had one person that they hired who was not a believer, and she just wreaked havoc on everything. And it was really, really bad. And my first month of being there, I had to fire her, and it was awful because she didn't respond well to it. And then she ended up opening up a lawsuit against us, which was super fun. It's still open. But one of the things that I felt from the very beginning of being there was, when I took the job, I felt like God said, "You're called to Zach." And I was like, I don't know what that means, but I guess we're going to figure it out over time. Because he's like Mr. Confident, right? He's super brilliant, really knows what he's doing. He loves Jesus, really, strong Christian, has a great family. They have a couple kids that they've adopted, just really great guy. And I was like, I don't understand why this is the guy you're highlighting, God. And then all of this stuff happened with the lawsuit, and everything hit the fan. And when that happened, we were marooned in Peru. That's when I got that phone call. Was literally as we were in the airport in Sao Paulo. Oh no, it was right before that.
Oh, Sao Paulo,
yeah, I don't remember. Somewhere right in there. That trip's a blur. But we, I find out down there, I get a phone call, and he was like, "Hey, I hate to call you, and I know you're on vacation, but we just got served a lawsuit, and I have to have your verbal permission to sign to receive it. So can you give verbal permission to the courier who's here?" And I was like, "Oh, cool. Yay, this is fun." We hang up the phone. He called back a couple days later while we're still marooned in Peru, and just broken. I mean, absolutely broken. This girl that filed a lawsuit against us was someone that he had taken a huge risk on, invested a lot in, really, she was the person that he was trying really hard to reach by providing work for her and doing all this kind of stuff. And he was trying to be a witness to her, and then all of this just got shoved in his face in the worst possible way. And it got really, really personal to him. Because she filed lawsuits against him personally and our company and me personally. It was a mess. And he was just sobbing on the phone, spiraling. And I'm standing on the beach in Peru by someone trying to talk to him. But it was in that moment that I was like, that's why I'm here. I don't think I'm even here to do this job. I think I'm just here because Zach needed someone with him in this. And that has just become increasingly more and more and more obvious to me over, honestly, the last couple of months, really, and shutting down the company and everything else that we've had to do. Our friend Ethan actually said something to me. He was like, honestly, Autumn, one of my thoughts in all of this was, I don't know that Zach's not suicidal right now, and I don't know that you're not the only one keeping him from doing that. And I was like, whew, that's heavy. I hope that's not the case. That's heavy. But being intentional matters. you know? The fact that he called me in that moment. And it wasn't to talk about business. It was, this hurts. He's like, and I know you're in ministry and you and Yale get all kinds of hard hits. How do you deal with this day in and day out? He's like, I don't know. He's like, this happened to me once this year. I've heard you tell 5 stories since I've met you of things that have happened this year that are like this. He's like, I don't know how you guys do this. What do you do? And I was able to just counsel him and walk him through that and encourage him in it and pray with him and just be a support for him in that. And like all of that kind of stuff as he just unloaded. Being intentional, it matters. It matters that we do these things and that we live this way intentionally as Christians. So the next one is super practical. Just take care of practical needs. Just like you would if it was somebody in your life group. You know, think about it. When someone in your life group goes to the hospital, what would you do?
Visit.
You'd go visit them? Yeah. Yeah. Take their family food, right? Call them, text them. Hey, how are you doing? Like, right? If someone in your life group is sick,
Bring him soup.
yeah. Hey, do you need some soup? Do you need some groceries? Can I make a run to the pharmacy for you? Like, what do you need, right? We just take care of each other's needs, and it's normal and it's natural. But what about when one of your coworkers calls in sick? What do you do? Honestly, most of us do nothing.
Yeah.
Most of us are like, dang it, I gotta carry their load today, right? But what if you showed up at their house? What if you took your lunch break and showed up at their house with, I don't know, a bottle of Sprite and some crackers? You know? What if you got a card for them? Or I don't know, like whatever it is that you want to do, depending on the person, go get them a book and take it to them. Hey, you're probably gonna be down for a couple of days. Here's a good book I've read recently. Enjoy. Right? Like we just don't think about those types of things. Because we think about them in the life of the church, but we don't think about them in the life of business. Because it's so unusual. Right? But like, why do we do that for each other in the church? Because we're human beings who have needs. Right? So why wouldn't that translate to our coworkers? Why wouldn't that translate over to the other things that we do? It's just that mindset shift, right? John 13:35 says, by this, everyone will know that you're my disciples if you love one another. Do you love your coworkers? Do you love your boss, your employees? Do you love them well? Do they feel loved by you? Not in a weird way, obviously, but do they feel loved by you? Like, do they know you like them, or are you that grump that they're always like, oh, watch out, here she comes, right? Don't be that person, right? We should radiate the love of Jesus. We should radiate the heart of God. You know, if they're sick, take them a book, right? Did they lose a family member? Send flowers, show up at the funeral, like whatever's going on, like just be there for them like you would be there for other people. This is the most simple one that is on this list, I think. But it's the one that we most often don't do because it's awkward. Like it just is. It's awkward. Like let's just call it what it is. Like, do they really want me there? Should I really be doing this? I don't know. Like this is my boss. Like I don't know if I should. But just showing up for people makes a huge difference in their lives. I've got 2 quick stories on this. One, my boss at Onboard, which was the sales job that I had that turned into an HR job. So she was our HR boss on that team. She was going out of town. And she was expressing in one of our meetings that like they had planned this big vacation. They're going on this huge vacation to Paris with their family and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, my house sitter just called me and she's sick and can't come. And it was like that weekend. And I was like, oh man, that sucks. And she's like, yeah, we don't know what we're going to do. We think we might just cancel our trip and push it back a few months because they can do that. I don't live in that world of, I'll just cancel our airplane tickets. But anyway, people live in different worlds. That's right. But I was like, all you need is a house sitter? She's like, yeah, but where am I going to find a house sitter in 2 days? I was like, I can find you one. She's like, what are you talking about? I was like, our church has tons of college students. Like, if you're comfortable with like a college student from our church staying at your house, they would totally do that for you. She's like, are you kidding me? You really think they would? She's like, I have a cat. Would that be a problem? I was like, no, we have dummies in our church that love cats. I was like, they would love to. So I called Liz.
Oh, Liz Foster.
Liz Foster, yeah. And I was like, hey, Liz, what are you doing this weekend? She's like, oh, I don't know, Liz. No plans for anything in my life? And I was like, great. I have a plan for your life. Could you house sit for my boss? And she's like, are you kidding me? And I was like, no. And she's like, I'd love to do that. And I was like, great, here's her phone number. And I like texted them both and I was like, hey, Nancy, this is Liz. She's on her kids' team. She's super responsible. She'll do a great job. If you want to use her, she's willing. Liz ended up house sitting for them like 8 or 10 times. She still does. She babysits their kids sometimes still. Like, she is fully invested in their lives, even after I'm not at that job anymore. Like, and Liz isn't even at Living Faith anymore, right? Like, there's just this awesome marry of, like, the work of the kingdom still continuing. Simply because I was like, I'll take care of that need. Yeah, I've got people that can do that. I can connect you with somebody. You know, it didn't take very much. And honestly, it didn't even take very much from me. It took a text message. It was literally what it took. That made a literal eternal impact on this family's life, who still don't know Jesus, but gosh darn it, they will, because Liz is determined. And I'm so thankful that she is. Another one is, at that same job, we had a coworker that joined our team. She was new to our team, and her mom passed away. And I don't know much about her family. I can assume a lot of things after this interaction and everything that happened in this story, but I can guess the fact that she has had a very hard time with her family. But she was very close to her mom, and she was wrecked, like beyond wrecked, like could not function in life for months. And I saw on Facebook, because I was Facebook friends with her, I saw on Facebook that she was like, oh, you know, we're doing this. They weren't going to do a funeral because too much. They couldn't handle it. But she was like, we're going to do a little party thing at the VA if anybody wants to come by. So I was like, hey, Yale, want to go to a VA for a kind of funeral for a coworker that I just met in between Near West and Irvington this week? So that's what we did. We finished Near West and drove down south to the VA, and we walked in the room. When we walked in the room, like, she was across the room, and she looked and saw me, and her face was like, it was like that, how do I know you? I know you. Who are you? Oh my gosh, and like that recollection of, you're my coworker. Why are you here? And she like came running across the room to me, and I was like, hey, I hope it's okay that I'm here. You posted on Facebook, and I just thought I'd come just to encourage you. We can't really stay very long because, you know, we're in between church services, and we got to get to Irvington by 3, but I just wanted you to know that I'm here for you. And she just like laid on my shoulder and wept for 10 minutes. And that's basically what we did. We just sat there, and she just cried. And then I left. But until the day that I was let go from that job, until the day I got fired there, like, she talked about that nonstop. And all the rest of my coworkers were like, you showed up to her funeral? Like, really? Why? You know? That matters. It matters that we show up. It matters that we're intentional, taking care of those practical needs. I mean, it's just like somebody in your life group, like showing up for when they have a baby, when they have a funeral, like those key moments in life matter to people, and it locks in their brain and they never forget it. They just don't. So something in our human nature. So think about how you can do that. Like, how can you just watch for needs in your coworkers and in your employees, and how can you either help them take care of those needs or take care of them for them? And it's not always like financially, like taking care of needs, but just practically, what do they need? They need a babysitter? Volunteer. You know, like if they're mentioning, oh my gosh, we haven't had a date night in months. You haven't had a date night in months? Okay, you're bringing your kids to my house Friday night, and they're going to hang out, and we'll have a lot of fun, and you guys go out. They can spend the night. They can spend the weekend if you want. Like, those types of things, like, people are just like, you'll do that for me? Really? And when you meet those practical needs, then it is the open door to those conversations. Okay, I've got 2 more really quick ones here. The next one is to be a confidant. Be a confidant for people. James 1:26. Buckle up. Here we go. James 1:26. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. James 1:26. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worship. No, is worthless. Sorry. Man, my brain is somewhere else. Their religion is worthless. That's a harsh scripture. I actually threw that one in last night because just happened to be reading James, and I read that, and I was like, oh, that hurts. I'm going to put that in. Because why not? Be a confidant for people, and not a gossip. Office gossip is the norm in every single office. It is always the norm. If someone tells you something, they pretty much expect that you're going to spread it everywhere. And when you don't, it shows. And when you're consistently that way, when you are a confidant for people, you will be shocked how many of your coworkers and employees will start coming to you with things. At the job at Onboard that I worked at, like that's one of the main reasons why they hired me from the sales team onto the HR team. Was because, and when they interviewed me for the position, that was the one thing that Nancy, my boss, said. She was like, when I started asking around to all the different managers, like, do you guys have anyone that you think would be good on this team to fill some of these positions that I have that are coming up open? She said 4 different managers that were not yours and yours, but 4 different managers mentioned you. And they said, I don't know much about her, but I know that all of my team goes to her when they're struggling with something. And that's why they hired me onto the HR team. That's how I got that job. It was a pay cut, but that's another story for another day. But being that confidant for people, being a place where people can trust, being a place where, whether it's work related or not, I've had all of the above. People coming to me and talking to me about things, especially honestly during COVID. Like all the time I was on Zoom calls, like during every break of my day, I was on a Zoom call with a different coworker who was just melting down about whatever's going on in their world. Because everybody was melting down at that point. No one knew where to go. And they didn't have a church community to rely on or anyone else other than their spouse, if they had a spouse, you know what I mean? Or if their spouse listened. I had my direct boss in that HR job, her name was Laura, and she was like bubbly cheerleader girl, right? Like literally leads the cheer squad for her daughter's high school. Her daughter's not on the cheer squad. She's super emo, but she leads the cheer. It's really funny. Anyway, that's beside the point. So Laura is like, my life is perfect and happy in every single moment, right? And that's how she lives her life. And then she came into the office one day and was like, not smiling. And I was like, something's wrong. Hey, what's up? And she just like started tearing up and was like, nothing. And I was like, hey, let's go for a walk. And she's like, okay, fine. I was like, I need coffee. Do you need coffee? And she's like, yeah, I need coffee. And I was like, great, let's go for a walk and get some coffee. So we start walking around downtown. And I was like, okay, you're not okay. Like what is going on? And she said, I got a text message from my husband on the way to work this morning that says he wants a divorce. I was like, in a text message? Really? Anyway, and lost people, man. But anyway, so she drops that, and I was like, oh, why are you here? Like, go home. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have so many personal days. Take one. She's like, no, I just need to be here and not anywhere else. And I was like, honestly, if I were you, I would go anywhere else. I was like, this is not where I would want to be. And her response shocked me because she had not ever been the person to come to me on anything before because she was my boss. And she like was very strict on these are the, right? And she said, honestly, I just thought if I don't go to talk to Autumn, I'm probably not going to make it through this. And I was like, all right, we're getting somewhere. Here we go. So then I got to kind of talk her through and counsel her through all of that and work her through that part of her process. The fun part was watching the rest of my team watch her and the transition over the next couple of months, because she went from like a screw him attitude and like very vocal about it to, okay, maybe he's not the whole problem. Like, there's some things in me too. I do these things at work too, don't I? Like, and my whole team like saw that process and were like, whoa, what the heck is happening? And what Laura told them all, like on one of my last days there, she was just like, yeah. She's like, it's been fun to work with Autumn, but like, honestly, I just really appreciate that she doesn't let me get away with who I was. And I was like, oh, cool. Glad it worked. That was not everybody says that. Not everybody says that. Another coworker at that place and another place, a girl named Donna Marie that a lot of you guys know because a bunch of you guys did like a margarita night with me with her trying to like invest in her. Yeah, that was fun. But Donna Marie and then another coworker that I have named Kelly at this last job, both of them were at a place where they were just, Donna Marie multiple times, just like struggling in work and just like, I don't feel like I fit here. Like nothing feels right. And again, just because I was consistent, because I was a confidant for them, they felt like they could come and talk to me and say, I hate my job and everything about it. And I wasn't going to go to our boss and be like, that she's like ready to quit, right? Like you should do something. Like I was just a confidant. I was just someone that they could talk to and not have to worry about who I was going to tell what they said. But they could just kind of talk through the struggle they were having at work. And both of them are people that have ended up going on to work at other companies and do other jobs as a result of those conversations that we had. And they're better for it. You know what I mean? Like they're in better jobs that better suit where they are and where they should be, and what they're suited to and that kind of thing. But just without having somebody to like process, I'm shocked, genuinely shocked, how many people have nobody to talk to. Like just genuinely shocked. Like we take this so for granted, guys. The fact that you have someone who's discipling you, the fact that you have a life group you can go to, we take this so for granted. We really, really do. So many people just have nobody. And just to have someone to say, man, I'm struggling with something, or, tell you about something good in their weekend that they didn't get to tell anybody else about. It just, being that confidant, being someone they know they can trust. I had one coworker that came to me and was like, my fiance had an affair and I don't know what to do. And he says he wants to give his life to Jesus and like wants to change it and wants us to go to like Christian counseling and all this stuff now. But she's like, I don't know. All this Jesus stuff is kind of crap, but you're the Jesus person that I know. So what do you think? Right? Like, all right, I'll be that Jesus person who's, probably full of shit, but whatever. Like that's their mentality, right? Like that's the constant thing that people say and is what it is, right? Okay, and then the last one, and we'll land on this, is, you could probably guess this one. Hear God and obey. Hear God and obey. I'm going to add a tagline, regardless of the cost. A lot of times in business, there's a huge cost to hearing God and obeying. It might be the cost of a relationship. It might be the cost of a job. It might be the cost of taking a job where you get paid a lot less. But if God's speaking it, then it's the right place to be. And if he's not speaking it, then it's the wrong place to be. And it's very, very easy in the business world to get caught up in that mindset of climbing the ladder. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having aspirations of moving up in a company. Like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if that's what God's called you to. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. But be willing to hear God and obey regardless of the cost. Joshua 1:7. Be strong and very courageous. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may be successful wherever you go. When we listen to the word of God, when we allow his word to change us, when we hear his voice, we hear his direction for things, and we obey it, we will be successful wherever we go. And sometimes that doesn't look like success. I would not say that my career life looks like a success. Everybody jokes about how I get fired all the time. Like, why do you just get fired all the time? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm always looking for a job. But honestly, it's mostly because I pick crap companies on purpose. Yeah. Because people there are broken and they need help. And then, when you're in a crap company, you get caught up in the mess of it. And that sucks. And it's uncomfortable and it's not fun. I've made all kinds of career moves that don't make sense at all. Like, don't at all make sense. Like, a lot of people tell me that I'm being dumb for the positions. But every change that I've made has been something God spoke. And so I can be confident in that, even knowing that I'm going into something that I'm like, this seems worse. But God spoke it. So even if it is worse, I'm going to trust that he's going to take this boss that is obviously a tyrant and change their life entirely. Who knows? If I'm intentional, maybe I can make an eternal impact. And maybe it doesn't matter if I make an impact on this company. Hopefully I do. Hopefully every company I work for, I leave better than when I started there. I want to work with excellence, right? Like that's a part of all of this. But also maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about the people who are there. And it's a lot less about the work that I'm doing. Because, I mean, one of those is eternal and one of them isn't. So, you know, when we go into it with an eternal mindset, it changes the way that we do our job. It changes the way that we look for a job. It changes the way that when you get, you know, that email from the HR department that says, hey, you're being considered for promotion. How many of us are like, yeah! Versus how many of us say, God, is this right? Or do we just take the promotion because that's the next step and it's more money and obviously God's having favor on me? Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. Maybe that's an open door that is not God opening the door. You do realize like Satan can open doors too, right? Like God's not the only one that can do that. So that's not like a super great philosophy to live by of like walking through open doors. Don't walk through every open door you see. Yeah, sometimes doors are just open. If you walk through them, you'll get arrested. Like, never mind. I'm not going to tell that one. But yeah, I mean, I've taken positions that were a step down from where I was. I've taken positions that were a step up from where I was. I've taken positions at great companies. I've taken positions at life-sucking jobs and companies. But every single one of them, God's been able to have an impact in some way on somebody. And God knew exactly what I needed, and he knew what they needed. And here's the deal. Like, at the end of the day, I've learned this, that if I can learn to focus on him and them, God will take care of me. And he does every time. Like, if I keep my focus on hearing God and taking care of the people around me and seeing people around me with an eternal focus, God has every single time been faithful to take care of the needs that I have. Sometimes it's not been the ways that I would desire. Right now, I'm in a season where I don't have a job, and I'm not even looking for one right now. I will starting on Monday. But up until this point, genuinely, like up until this point, God told me not to. He said, don't. Wait, I've got this. And the last month and a half has been a lot of waiting. And real hard. Like it's been testing for my faith. But God's come through every time. And we've had every need taken care of. And I'm trusting that starting on Monday, when he told me to start looking, he'll lead me the right way, right? I don't know what that's going to be, but I know he does. And if I stay focused on him and them, he'll take care of me. So what about you? James 1:22, right? Don't just listen to the word and be deceived, but do what it says. So I guess kind of my challenge for you guys, my encouragement for you as we end this session is, what are these things you do well? What are these things do you not do at all you never thought about doing? You know, what of these things are things that you've tried doing and it wasn't successful and you're like just burnt by it? That God's saying, try again. Like it still matters. And like maybe that person didn't get saved and you hope that they would. But that's not on you. The next person might, right? When we give up quickly and easily, God can't move, right? He moves through people. That's what he does. Like he could just do it on his own, but he doesn't. He uses us. So, what do you need to start doing again? Or what do you need to start doing at all in your job? Or if you're thinking, oh man, like just sitting here, I've screwed this up so bad already that I don't know how to turn it around. Like I'm already the person my coworkers hate. I'm already the whatever it is like that I said. Hey, tomorrow's a new day. And you can go into work and say, hey guys, before we start this meeting, can I take a minute? And I know this might be weird, but can I just repent to all of you guys and say I'm really sorry. I've been this way as a coworker. And I was at this conference this weekend where God just really spoke to my heart and told me that I need to be more faithful in this job. So I'm going to commit to you guys that I'm going to be more faithful because I'm a follower of Jesus and that's what I'm supposed to be doing and I haven't been. What kind of an impact could that have on your team? If we're open and honest like that. Like we do that with each other in the life of the church, right? You'll go to your discipler and say, this is where I'm struggling. This is where I'm failing. You'll go to your life group and say, oh, I'm destroyed in this area, right? Your coworkers you see 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Most likely. You know, like you spend a lot of time with these people, a whole lot of time with these people. Please don't waste it. Like the impact that you can have on their life. Like, actually, let me just say that differently. You are having an impact on their life.
Yeah.
Is it for the kingdom or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
You are having an impact. Even if you think you're not, you are. And if you're thinking, oh man, I've already screwed this up so bad, tomorrow's a new day. Change. Be like Jesus, right? Stop it.
You just said change. Stop.
Change. Be better. No, but like don't hear that as like condemnation, but like just conviction from the Lord of, you know, what do you need to do better? And do it.
Yeah.
And love your coworkers well. But that's all I got. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to throw in, we have a couple minutes. Yeah.
How do you balance, like let's say a work that is all-consuming, emotionally, physically, spiritually, ministry that's also all-consuming, physically, mentally, spiritually, and then having enough, essentially, I don't want to say having enough, but like also ministering to your coworkers
Yeah.
or people that you work alongside.
So for the sake of the recording, I'm going to repeat your question.
Yeah.
So how do you balance being in a difficult job or just any job that takes all of your energy and being in ministry that takes all of your energy and just like not having anything left, right?
Yeah.
I would say take advantage of the moments you do have. Like if you don't have the time to invite all your coworkers over for dinner, don't do that. Like that's just me. Like that's what I felt called to do. That's just an example. You know, but like you're sitting in a nurse's station, right? And you're filling out reports or whatever. Like how are you utilizing that time? You know, the small break room conversations, like taking those times to like say, okay, God, give me enough right now. You know, if you have a 10-minute break, take 5 minutes of it for yourself and 5 minutes for somebody else. You know, like that kind of thing, I think. And again, it's all about intentionality, right? And then making sure you know your limits. Man, especially in your job, you need to know your limits. And there are some seasons where you have it in you to invest in your coworkers, and there's some seasons that you don't. And in all honesty, in those seasons, you being honest with your coworkers about where you are is going to have just as much of an impact as you being intentional to do something for them.
Yep.
You saying, hey, I'm like, man, I'm struggling right now. I feel like I have so much on my plate. I'm having a hard time hearing God. I'm like just talking like normal, like be normal. You know what I mean? Like, but seriously, like we try to be something.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to be something, just be you.
Yeah.
And like be comfortable in your own skin and then ask for help.
Yeah.
Get help. Even if you're like, I just want to go home and sleep for this afternoon because that's all, like I have one break. Maybe you need to sleep for 2 hours of that afternoon and then you need to go to somebody else's house and sit on their couch for an hour. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that goes for all of us, especially when you're in a hard place and, you know, in a hard environment for work. Yeah, it does. It sucks the life out of you. You come home at the end of the day and you're just like, I got nothing left. You know, especially if you have kids and you're like, gosh, now I got to take care of these things. Like, there's everywhere I go, people just need me all the time. Right? Not that I ever feel that way. But yeah, asking for help and taking the help when it's offered. You know, let people into where you are. Suffering in silence is not a badge of honor. I'm not looking at anybody as I say that. Suffering in silence is not a badge of honor. Ask for help. Anything else? Cool. God, help us do these things. Help us be faithful. Help us be consistent. Help us be bold in our faith. God, help us love people well. Help us to get what we need along the way. But more than anything, God, keep our eyes on you and on people around us, and help us just to trust you with the rest of it, God. But I do pray for every person in this room, God, that the impact that we have in our jobs and our workplaces around this city and around the place where we live would be an eternal impact, God. And I just believe with these people in this room for the coworkers that they know don't know you, and pray that you would use conversations and use all different kinds of things that they say and that they do, little ways that they show love and care for their coworkers, to make an eternal impact, God. Just believe that next year when we come to ReAlign, these people in this room will have stories of coworkers they led to Christ. Or their spouse led to Christ. Whatever the case may be. God. Life impact, God. Let us have life impact through our jobs. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.